About 12 hours before the Hamas massacre of Israeli citizens in Israel last year, I had a powerful dream which seemed to foretell the terrible event before it happened. And this is one of many such premonitions and meditative visions which I've had over the years. In this video, I'm going to share with you that dream in detail, as well as several other profound precognitions I've had over the years. And what does the possible existence of precognition mean for our understanding of not only time, but of the cosmos itself? And beyond all this, I'm going to say why I believe that our civilization's forgetting of integrated intelligence is a great tragedy. Integrated intelligence, by the way, is the human intuitive capacity to access information that seemingly crosses space and time. And despite the fact that this ability has been largely forgotten in our modern society, I believe that we all possess it to some degree. If this is your first visit to my channel, my name is Marcus T. Anthony, and I'm a futurist who's been actively involved in the academic future studies community for over 2 decades. But you may note that I'm not a typical futurist, and I'm actually mixing my modalities by introducing ideas like integrated intelligence and intuitive perception into my thinking. So please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Admittedly, we futurists are a diverse and often weird bunch, and I'd like to think that I'm only a little bit weirder than most. After all, I'm able to regularly talk about these kinds of things at international conferences and write about them in peer-reviewed academic journals. And although it's a bit lonely at times, there are many other futurists who are open to ideas related to integrated intelligence, including Suhail Inayatullah, Oliver Markley, Irvin Laszlo, Peter Russell, Gene Houston, and the late Barbara Marx Hubbard, amongst others. Yet the truth is that academic futurists are not fortune tellers, and indeed many futurists, perhaps most, reject the idea that the future can be accurately forecasted, even using trends analysis. Indeed, most assume that the future is not set and that we can intentionally influence its unfolding. And by the way, that's why we call my field Futures Studies, not the future studies, because we begin with the assumption that there are multiple possible futures. So what the hell do futurists do if they don't predict the future? You may ask. Suhail Inayatullah's 6 Pillars of Future Studies provides a great overview of that. In Inayatullah's thinking, forecasting is only one of 6 primary focus areas of futurists. The others are mapping the past to futures, understanding patterns of change over time, deepening our questions and thus our thinking about the future, creating alternative futures, and strategizing for desirable futures. Now, I think you'll agree that all these things are really interesting and important things to think about when we're discussing the future. And despite what I've said so far, I'm no fortune teller either. And while I'm certain from personal exploration that at least some futures can be intuitively sensed, I'm not suggesting that we can simply predict them with a high degree of certainty. If I truly believed that, I'd be making millions on the stock market just quietly. Now I've gotten that out of the way, let me get back to my future premonitions, including the one about the massacre in Israel. These premonitions have typically occurred in non-ordinary states of consciousness, such as while asleep and dreaming, on the verge of sleep, during meditation, or when I'm very relaxed. And by the way, the more relaxed and present you are, the more readily you can access integrated intelligence. This is well known amongst parapsychologists, and it's why their experiments typically put people into relaxed states to test for things like precognition, telepathy, clairvoyance, and so on. In previous videos, I've already outlined a couple of my premonitory visionary experiences, such as in 2014 when I dreamed of the heart attack and death of author Stuart Wilde, 6 days before it happened. And an even more incredible experience 30 years ago when a meditation teacher of mine predicted the precise time of the appearance of UFOs, which I then personally witnessed on a clear winter's night in Australia. You can find the links to these videos in the description. More recently, and on the morning of October 7, 2023, I had a dream which startled me so much that I awoke and immediately recorded it on the Notes app on my iPhone, which is how I now keep my dream journal, something I've been doing for many decades. Now, if October 7 rings a bell, you may recall it was the day of the Hamas massacre of Israeli citizens when militants stormed across the border from Gaza. I live in China, and my 12:25 a.m. dream, China time, occurred approximately 12 hours before the Hamas attack began. I'd now like to share that dream with you exactly as I recorded it. I have edited almost nothing except for the odd typo. So here, I read it now. I was kind of watching from the third person perspective, but was also first person at times, as if I was the experiencer. Suddenly I became aware of machine gun fire. The doors opened and I knew there was a massive terrorist attack coming. I could hear people being shot. I was kind of upstairs in maybe a 2 or 3 story building, like in an old western town or something, maybe Israel. I climbed out the window and up onto the roof, and I was trying to make no noise on the roof so I wouldn't be heard. But then I ran into another guy who was bald, and it seemed like he was one of my colleagues, like someone who is Jewish. I was kind of excited, but he told me that a lot of people had been killed, including relatives. There was a kind of rush of excitement, like a movie, or adrenaline. Perhaps a rather startling aspect of these dreams, which I have fairly regularly, is that even when they strongly correlate with events which mirror them closely and soon follow the dream, I often don't recall the dream, even after hearing the news or experiencing the event personally. In this case, I only found the dream about October 7 in my diary more than a month after the event in Israel, when looking back over some of my recent entries. I always put the date and precise time of the dream at the top of each journal entry, so I know exactly when the dreams occur. Similarly, I only recalled the Stuart Wilde death dream a few weeks after I heard of Stuart Wilde's death, again while checking old dream records. So when people tell me they don't have precognitive dreams, I tell them they probably have many, but they just don't remember them. My terrorist attack dream is fairly typical of precognitive dreams in that it's not a precise video reproduction of the events being foreseen, but combines the symbolic and the literal, but with major motives being clearly consistent with the real-life event. Building in the dream was fairly typical of the kinds of standalone houses in the kibbutz in Israel, and the surrounding scenery was flat, dry, and desert-like, which is why I wrote that it seemed to me to be in the arid US West or Israel. I sensed the Jewish heritage of my colleague from his dream appearance, kind of a stereotypically Jewish-looking person, and just the overall vibe of the man. It seemed to be the most obvious feature of his overall demeanor. I experienced a rather similar precognitive dream in the early hours of the morning of March 15, 2019, China time, where I dreamt I was walking on a path in the mountains above a coastal city, which I could see at a far distance to my left. Suddenly, a group of rather agitated people rushed past me, and from their attire I could see clearly that they were Muslims. I wrote in my journal that I was unsure whether they were running away from something dangerous or about to engage in some terrorist-like activity themselves. I looked down again to the coastal city on the plains below, and I saw smoke rising from it, as if a disaster had just occurred. A soft voice then said, 50 people dead. I then awoke, spooked, and recorded the dream in my journal, noticing that it felt like a genuine precognition. I then went back to sleep. Next morning, I recalled the dream clearly and went to check the news. That's when I read that 49 Muslims had just been massacred at a mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand. Christchurch is a coastal city with the New Zealand Alps inland to the west, which seemed to be from where I was watching the events in the dream. One day later, one more of the injured died, bringing the total dead to 50. When I checked the times, I saw my dream was several hours before the attack in Christchurch. Now, not all precognitions are this profound, dramatic, or tragic. Many of them are quite mundane. And some others I've experienced include someone cancelling an upcoming meeting on me and the outcome of an important job interview, as just 2 examples. Of course, it's possible that any given idea or image held within the mind that comes to fruition might just be a coincidence, and in certain circumstances this will be the case. But now let's take a brief look at two important further aspects of our relationship with time, at some of the experimental evidence and our theoretical understanding of the nature of time. Do these provide any support for the idea that we might sometimes see into the future? Over the years, there have been many precise attempts to find evidence for precognition under controlled experimental conditions. Perhaps the most famous of recent studies was published by Darrell Bem in 2011 in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. One of Bem's 9 experiments tested the idea that understanding of vocabulary tests could be improved, even if the words were learned after the test. And Bem did find significant results. And he maintains that future learning can impact current knowledge. That's pretty mind-boggling. The effect was dubbed the retroactive facilitation of recall. Bem's article, however, was met with swift denunciation by many skeptics. According to parapsychologist Dean Radin in an article called Reconsidering Academic Beliefs About the Paranormal, published in the journal Explore in July 2022, over 30 laboratories from 14 countries have published a total of 90 replication attempts of Bem's experiment. According to Radin, a meta-analysis of all these studies has established decisive evidence of an effect, in this case by a factor of 10 million. However, not a single one of the scientific journals Bem had regularly published in would accept this meta-analysis. Radin puts this down to an invincible prejudice to topics considered paranormal amongst gatekeepers in the scientific community. This is perhaps best exemplified by cognitive scientist Douglas Hofstadter, who has stated that if precognition is validated and given credibility, it, quote, would necessarily send all of science as we know it crashing to the ground, and it would be the end of science as we know it, unquote. So-called psi phenomena goes against the laws of physics, Hofstadter declared, while calling the people who test such claims crackpots. There are many more examples of the hostility to these ideas that I could provide, but I think you get the idea. Beyond the scientific arguments, I tend to agree with the late parapsychologist Lawrence Lashan and author Paul Kiritzis, who I'll mention again in a moment, that a purely empirical attitude is not the best way to study topics like precognition. For phenomena as strange and elusive as psi experience, we need to take reports of such things seriously. And for this reason, I would also highly recommend that you keep a dream and meditation journal, as that will give you a more direct feel for how the human psyche functions. And yes, it's messy back there, and sometimes quite confusing. You've been warned. Author Paul Kiritzis has written about the topic in his book, A Critical Investigation into Precognitive Dreams. For example, the book details the precognitive dreams of 15 participants in a study he personally conducted. Kiritzis' results showed that out of 51 precognitive dream fragments, 65 were classified as excellent, 29% as good, and 6% as average. The dreams were mostly about personal matters, 88%, with a small proportion being about broader events in society, 12%. The study concluded that precognition isn't limited to mystics but is a common aspect of human consciousness. Kiritzis found that precognition doesn't adhere to strict time constraints, sometimes occurring minutes, days, months, or even years before related events. Kiritzis questions whether time is indeed unidimensional and invites us to consider the possibility that multiple dimensions of time exist. Indeed, there have been several posited models and experiments in physics over the past century or so that have challenged our understanding of the nature of time and which suggest that the passing of time may not be a simple linear progression. One, for example, is Einstein's theory of time dilation, where according to his theory of relativity, time can be affected by gravity and velocity. In quantum physics, the idea of entanglement and non-locality has led to some speculation that information can effectively be transmitted faster than the speed of light, challenging our traditional understanding of causality and the linear progression of time. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation in the field of quantum gravity suggests that time may not be fundamental to the cosmos, but rather emerges from a deeper underlying structure. Meanwhile, in the block universe theory, the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously as a static four-dimensional block, and this model suggests that all moments in time are equally real. One particularly intriguing theory of time is that of physicist Itzhak Bar. His model posits that time is emergent rather than fundamental, deriving from the interactions of underlying quantum processes. Bar suggests that the perception of time's flow is an illusion, with past, present, and future coexisting in a timeless landscape. Itzhak Bar challenges traditional views of time as linear and suggests a deeper connection between quantum mechanics and our perception of time. Barr's theory of time thus offers a theoretical framework for precognition, because here, time is an holistic structure where all moments exist concurrently. Precognition could thus occur through the entanglement of consciousness with quantum processes, allowing individuals to access information about events yet to unfold. Now, I'm not a physicist, and I'm not advocating for any of these theories of time and space. I'm merely suggesting that our everyday experience of time and space may represent a mere local sampling being delimited by our biological apparatus of cognition in normal states of waking consciousness. Perhaps precognition violates not the actual laws of physics, merely our present general accepted understanding. Let me conclude by saying that I do believe that we humans are relatively smart, but since the scientific enlightenment, we've taken a civilizational sidetrack which has led to our developing a very imbalanced map of the relationship between consciousness, nature, and cosmos. This misstep has severely retarded our innate integrated intelligence, disconnected us from important information sources, and alienated us from the cosmos which has spawned us. We have come to fundamentally misunderstand the non-local nature of consciousness. That mistake has emerged from our over-reliance on reductionist neuroscience and the dominance of a scientific materialism which features both delimited methods and delimited interpretations of data. Despite the remarkable technological and civilizational developments that we can boast of and that we can see all around us today, at a greater distance we humans might be considered by alien creatures to be cosmic retards. And perhaps the only way to unretard ourselves is to willingly take a great ego fall and admit how wrong we've been about our maps of mind and cosmos. That's something worth contemplating deeply. See you again soon in a probable, possible, or even unfeasible future.